Wonderful. I am Brother Dennis. I am grateful to be here with you. Some of you I've already met before and know you, and I'm glad to see you again. To begin with, what makes your life stressful? Let's hear some.
Too much to do.
Too much. Too much. Specifically, what type of things
like
to do?
Callings, homework, visiting family, friends. Just
too much.
Yeah.
Too much. All right.
Yeah.
Other things that make your life stressful.
Cleaning.
What's that? Drama. I learned. I can relate to that one as well. Others. So when your life is stressful, what do you do about it? What works for you? We'll talk about a few things that that research shows and can be helpful, but what are some of the things that relieves your stress valve?
Organized.
Okay, being organized.
Yeah. And running.
Go running, exercise. We're going to talk a little bit about that.
The temple.
The temple. So standing in holy places and places to reflect and ponder. Okay?
Listening to music.
Listening to music, playing music. Okay? Some good ideas. Let me point out one thing to begin with, if I can bring it. We often approach life with the assumption that stress is bad and we want to get rid of it. But in fact, there are different types of stress, and not all stress is bad. There's a term that's called eustress, and there's a term that's called distress. Distress is bad stress. But eustress, which we don't hear that term as often, is actually healthy stress. It motivates us, it encourages us to reach our potential. In fact, the research shows that when we have nothing to do, when our life is stress-free, it often is a period in our life when maybe depression or discouragement creeps in. I know each of you are probably saying, I'll be so glad when the semester's over and I have a little bit of break. And that's probably true. It's nice to have some respite. But if your break extended too long, it would not be a good thing for your mental health. And so when we think of stress up to, we can think of it almost as a linear relationship. So up to a certain point, when we have stress, when we have challenge in our life, it encourages us to be more effective and more productive. But then there becomes a point when the stress is too much and our productivity begins to decline. And at that point, stress can begin to have health problems. It can have both physical health and mental health problems. At that point, we are then at a point where we're embarking on what we would call distress. So another way to look at it is, to a degree, when we are challenged, which we sometimes call stress, our performance seems to meet the challenge. In the scriptures, we read that there needs be opposition in all things, and often it's that challenge that propels us onward and causes us to grow. One researcher talks about this concept as flow. Think for a moment of the times in your life when hours seem to go by and yet it felt like minutes. So when you think of the absent-minded professor who's down in his lab working on his experiment and misses his wedding for the umpteenth time, he's so engaged, he's so engrossed in the activity that time seems to pass him by. What type of activities give you flow? What type of challenge you to the point that time just seems to fly by? Let's hear a few.
I just learned how to juggle, and so I'd be like practicing and like balls would be going everywhere, but then I realized that it's already been like half an hour and I've just been sitting there practicing.
So it's a challenge. It's something that's a challenge, and it's something that you have to focus on in the moment. And we're going to talk about focusing as well. So a flow moment. Anything else? What else puts you in flow?
Playing sports.
Okay, so hours can fly by.
Yeah.
Now, if sports were always easy for you, would time fly as quickly?
I don't know, like in practice it doesn't go as quick.
Okay.
Mostly like standing around learning stuff, and it's more fundamentals, but like when you're actually, I know like especially with racing motocross, it's just like so quick.
So when you're being challenged,
Yeah.
when your skills are being challenged, time flies and you're engaged. Okay? So we can think of eustress, that's that term. We can think of it as acting in faith. We can think of it as being anxiously engaged in a good cause. We can think of it as training, support, being steadfast. But at some point, we can become overwhelmed and our faith can be turned to fear. And we can become distressed. We can become overwhelmed. Or we can feel like there's a lack of assistance, a lack of professional development. Okay? So, stress is both good and bad. So, we've talked a little bit about this, but how do you manage stress? How do you manage stress? Let's hear, I'm going to share with you just a few ideas. One is exercise. Often when we are feeling overwhelmed because we have so many things to do, we have assignments, we have visits, we have our church obligations. What's the first thing that usually you throw off your plate? What things begin to slide?
Your health.
Okay, your health. It's specifically in what way?
You just eat differently. You don't care what you put in your body. You don't exercise. You don't.
So your eating is going to be different.
Yeah.
You're not going to be as conscious as to what you eat. Your exercise. Okay. There was another hand.
Sometimes also when you have a lot of stress, you tend to worry about the things that don't matter as much. Like you throw away like the less important things and worry about the things that matter most.
And
like, I mean, all of it is important, but you kind of forget about the basic things, and you're obviously stressed out most about the things that, oh, I've got to get this assignment done tomorrow, and that's the thing that's stressing you out the most. And then you're also forgetting about the other little things too.
absolutely. Absolutely. And we're going to talk
Like
a little bit
eating.
more about that. Eating.
Yeah.
The little things, the
Or
things.
exercising.
So we've got to put first things first, and we've got to, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about your idea of you start thinking, worrying about things.
Mm-hmm.
There's a term called rumination. Rumination is the idea of processing ideas over and over again. And we'll get to that in just a moment, but that's important as well. So exercise regularly. When your life gets busier, don't cut out exercise. You have to be physically strong before you can handle your mental challenges. Okay? So don't cut out exercise. Healthy eating. Eat well. And maintaining our physical health is important to maintaining our mental health as well as our spiritual health. Isn't it odd that we have the scriptures, and yet we have a word of wisdom. We have a law of health. And the Lord reminds us that all things are spiritual. All things are spiritual. Adequate sleep. Anyone do any all-nighters or any late-nighters, homework? Okay. Research out of Harvard suggests that most students would be better off by getting a few hours extra sleep and studying 2 hours less. The brain requires sleep. The body requires sleep. In fact, another study from Johns Hopkins found that that individuals who got an extra hour of sleep per night over the course of 10 years, on average, they lost 10 pounds. Now, why would their weight be tied to what they eat?
You actually burn calories when you're sleeping.
Okay, you burn calories, and they probably burn calories when they're awake too. But you're right, we burn calories when we're sleeping.
Also, a lot of times when you stay up late doing things, you're
snacking things. And
So
not good.
stress eating. So if we're eating or we're staying up late, we're stressed. Think about when we're eating at the meal. When we're eating a meal, for example, we may be more conscious of what we're eating. We may be more conscious when we're full. But if we're eating while we're watching TV or when we're doing homework or something, sometimes we can just keep on shoveling it in and not really realize what we're doing because we're not tuned into that. Any other reasons why stress might be tied to our weight?
Well, I know that your body takes 6 hours of sleep just to recharge for the next day, and then if you have the extra 2 hours to get 8 hours of sleep, then your body can rebuild and it helps your mind. So if you're not getting enough sleep, then your body, your mind's not going to be able to really reset all the way, and so that stress is just going to carry over, and it's going to just kind of a vicious cycle.
Absolutely. There is wisdom in getting enough sleep. If the choice is between staying up till 2, 3 in the morning to get something done or going to sleep, I hope that you'll be planful enough that you'll be able to go to sleep. I know that life happens and sometimes there may be exceptions, but try to make sure that you're getting adequate sleep. Research from Harvard and Johns Hopkins both show that it's important to effective learning and it's important to stress management. First things first. I'm going to show you a slide that talks about that a little bit more. So I'm going to delay that one, but wherever, and that should be ever rather than every, but wherever you are, be there. The Massachusetts Stress Clinic, the director of that clinic is John Zen, and he has written a book called exactly that, Wherever You Are, Be There. And he talks about the danger in either ruminating on the past or in excessively worrying about the future. And I would just ask you to ponder in your mind how much of your life is spent in the past, thinking, or in the future, and you're avoiding the present. Do you worry about, well, I shouldn't have done that. Well, I shouldn't have done that. I wish that would have gone differently. Rumination, the research shows, I don't know exactly why, but rumination is more common among women than it is among men. But worrying about things in the past, or excessively worried about things to come. When you brushed your teeth this morning, how many of you were thinking, what were you thinking when you were brushing your teeth? Word it that way.
It's the fastest way of brushing your teeth.
Okay. Fast?
What I was going to do that day.
Okay. So most people are not thinking, all right, circles, get those back molars, and rather what most people are thinking about is either what they have to do today or they're thinking about what happened yesterday. The more time, we hear a lot about the impact that even yoga has on stress management. What is the goal of yoga? The goal of yoga is to focus often on our breathing and to focus on the now. Focus on a single thing. Often it's breathing, often it's some other thing that you might focus on, a mantra or something, but it's focusing on the present. So the point being, the more time you can spend in the present mentally, the more you're able to meet the challenges that you have. Yes, you might look out over the semester and say, wow, I have all these assignments that I have to do, and they worry me. And you get caught up in the worry of all you have to do. Rather, well, today I have to do this. And I'm going to take this bite of the elephant. And I'm going to focus on this bite only, and tomorrow I'll focus on something different. But focusing on the here and now. Lighting the camel, the idea, as you've heard the statement, this was the straw that broke the camel's back. Okay, the idea, well, what can we do to take some of the load off? Are there Are there individuals that can help us? Can we draw the support of friends and family? Can we delegate some of the responsibilities that we have? Do we have to do it all ourselves? Or do we just have to make the hard decision and say, you know, I'd love to do some of those things, but I can't. I'm going to have to reduce some of my activities so that I can manage things effectively. And then the last thing, which I'm going to, again, speak a little bit more on in a minute, is keep an eternal perspective. So often we get caught up with viewing life 6 inches away. And 6 inches away, it looks pretty challenging. And in the 6 inches of mortality or the here and now, we might have frustration, we might have depression, we might have hardship. But if we often remember, how many times does the word remember show up in the Book of Mormon? If we remember and we look at life through an eternal perspective and remember that, you know, this is part of my earthly experience, but I'm in this for the long haul. I'm in this for eternity. And the decisions that I make today will have an eternal impact. If we can frequently remind ourselves to view life from that lens, it can also help us not get caught up in the challenges that are right here with us. Elder Romney, who was in the First Presidency a number of years ago, made this statement about self-reliance. Without self-reliance, one cannot exercise these innate desires to serve. How can we give if there is nothing there? Food for the hungry cannot come from empty shelves. Money to assist the needy cannot come from an empty purse. Support and understanding cannot come from the emotionally starved. Teaching cannot come from the unlearned. And most of all, spiritual guidance cannot come from the spiritually weak. The reason we teach self-reliance is because it puts us in a position to serve and bless and help others. Now, he may be talking about food storage and education, but isn't that true in other aspects of life? When you have good physical health, when you have good mental health, when you take that time to be self-reliant because you've taken care of yourself, won't that allow you to sharpen the saw in a way that you'll be a better servant, that you'll be better able to meet the many challenges that you have? Take time for those essential things. First things first. When we think about all the things that are on our plate, all of them are not equal. There are some things that may be very urgent, but they're really not that important. And there may be things that are very important, but are not urgent. This, according to Stephen R. Covey, is the key to not only being an effective person, but to managing things well. Doing those things that are not necessarily urgent, but are important. So it may be, and doing them and not delaying until they may become urgent. So we might have a paper that's due. And we might say, well, I've got 3 weeks to work on that. I'll put it off for the time being. What's the difference between doing a paper today and doing a paper the day before it's due? Right, the second it becomes urgent, then there's added stress. I would encourage you as much as possible to do those important tasks, those important assignments at periods of time long enough in advance that a high level of urgency has not entered into the picture. Make sure you're spending time in quadrant number 1 doing those, quadrant number 2, doing those things that are not necessarily urgent, but are doing those things that are important. We've talked a little bit about this, but challenge and stress, so the skill level, we want to use our skills. It's when apathy or worry, boredom enter in, when we have high challenge, but we have not We have not developed our skills. We have not prepared our mind, our heart, our physical ability to meet those challenges. And we've talked about that. Our time is that short, but I want to end with just a little Mormon message.
Every one of us has times when we need to know things will get better. My declaration is that is precisely what the gospel of Jesus Christ offers us, especially in times of need. Years ago, last month, a little family set out to cross the United States. Every earthly possession they owned packed into the smallest trailer available. No money, an old car. They drove exactly 34 miles up the highway, at which point their beleaguered car erupted. The young father surveyed the steam, matched it with his own, then left his trusting wife and 2 innocent children, the youngest just 3 months old, to wait in the car while he walked the 3 miles or so to the southern Utah metropolis of Canaryville. Population then, I suppose, 65. Some water was secured at the edge of town, and a very kind citizen offered to drive back to the stranded family. The car was attended to and slowly, very slowly, driven back to St. George for inspection. After more than 2 hours of checking and rechecking, no immediate problem could be detected, so once again the journey was begun. In exactly the same amount of elapsed time, at exactly the same location, on that highway, with exactly the same pyrotechnics, from under that hood, the car exploded again. Now feeling more foolish than angry, the chagrined young father once more left his trusting loved ones and started the long walk for help once again. This time, the man providing the water said, "Either you or that fellow who looks just like you ought to get a new radiator for that car." He didn't know whether to laugh or to cry at the plight of this young family. "How far have you come?" he said. 34 miles, I answered. "How much farther do you have to go?" 2,600 miles, I said. "Well, you might make that trip, and your wife and those 2 little kiddies might make that trip, but none of you are going to make that trip in that car." He proved to be prophetic on all counts. Just 2 weeks ago, I drove by that exact spot for just an instant. I thought perhaps I saw on that side road an old car and 2 little children. Just ahead of them, I imagined that I saw a young fellow walking toward Canaryville. The weight of a young father's fear evident in his pace. In that imaginary instant, I couldn't help calling out to him, "Don't you quit. You keep walking. You keep trying. There is help and happiness ahead. Some blessings come soon. Some come late. And some don't come till heaven. But for those who embrace the gospel of Jesus Christ, they come. It will be all right in the end. Trust God and believe in good things to come.
Thank you for coming today. I hope each of you will maintain an eternal perspective. And doing so will help you manage the stress in your life and put you on a path towards healthy living. Thank you.